Hi, I'm James. I'm creative director for Battle Sister.
So, James, for people who don't know what Battle Sister is, give a little brief overview about the game. This is a VR game.
Yeah, it's a VR shooter, narrative VR shooter on Oculus Quest initially, with hoping for Oculus Rift next year as well. And it's set in the war-torn world of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, which is grim and dark and full of lots of violence.
What a fun world to build a VR game into. Can you talk a little about, like, do you have any history with Warhammer? Did you play it as a kid? Do you play it now?
So yeah, a whole mix of history actually. So yes, I did. I used to play when I was younger. I used to play Space Hulk and 40k, and started with Hero Quest way back in the day, if anyone remembers that one. And then for the last few years with Pixel Toys, we've been making various Warhammer games in conjunction with Games Workshop. So we made a game called Realm War, which was a couple of years ago, which was an Age of Sigmar game, and we made Warhammer 40,000 Freeblade, which is a big success, was on the Apple stage a few years ago, and was a huge success for the company. So yeah, we love 40k, and we know it pretty well. We've got a lot of miniatures kicking about, and yeah, it's good stuff.
So I haven't played the game, but I have watched a lot of gameplay of it, and I can already see you've already put so many of these cool weapons, like the heavy bolter and the plasma pistol and the chain swords and stuff like that are in this game. It's really interesting because we've seen these weapons before in a video game, but never in VR. I mean, you can actually hold these weapons and aim them, and you can actually feel and hear what a heavy bolter sounds like in this game. What were some of the challenges in creating these weapons that really haven't been handled that way before?
So, I mean, the first thing to say is it was a challenge. Yeah, I think that was something that took a lot of work. So the bolter, I mean, starting from the bolter, everybody who loves 40k has a different view of what the bolter sounds like, feels like, how powerful it is, how big it is, and we found that. Because we've got a lot of 40k fans on the team, so that obviously had those discussions internally. Then we have those discussions with Games Workshop as well, and obviously as we've put stuff out into the public eye, we start to get that feedback as well of people going, "Oh, no, plasma gun should not be like this," or a bolter should be like that, and so we absolutely do listen to that stuff. And what we try to do is just work out what our bolter is, and what our las gun is, and what our plasma pistol is going to be, and that's really good fun. Sometimes we've had to sort of go back to Games Workshop. Things like ammo counters was a really interesting one, because the miniatures are obviously only that big, and not big enough to actually see what the ammo counters look like. And so we actually went back to Games Workshop and said, are they digital? Are they, what do they look like? And Jervis Johnson, who designed the Space Marines, actually told us and said, "Oh yeah, it should be like this," and so we've based a lot of that on that, which is much more analog. So they're little, like the little clickers you used to have to count how many people are coming in somewhere. That's what they're like, the little dials that click around inside the bolter housings. So yeah, that kind of level of detail we love doing.
That's crazy. I don't think a lot of people know, like, the amount of research you guys do to make sure that it's accurate to the model from a gameplay perspective. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, like you said, the models are this big. You had to go to the person who originally created the design of the Space Marines to say, "Hey, how does this work?" That's amazing.
Yeah, because there's been lots of different versions as well. Obviously, there's been a lot of games over the last few years, and each one of those has different interpretations. And same with bolter sound effects as well. We trying to get that working in a way that sounds amazing when particularly on the different headsets as well, because we're supporting Quest 2, they have different speaker configurations. Just trying to make sure that those sound effects sound amazing on each headset is a challenge for our audio guys.
So you mentioned this is a narrative-driven experience. Can you talk about who will be fighting in this game?
So we are fighting the forces of chaos for the majority of the game. It's fair to say. I won't say much more beyond that.
Spoilers.
No spoilers. So yes, we're fighting the word bearer Marines, predominantly Chaos Cultists. Obviously, they've got lots of demons, Space Marines. What else have we got that we've shown? Don't want to spoil anything too much. We've got Terminators in there, and they're one of the ones I get really excited about. I used to love. I mentioned about Space Hulk, playing that when I was younger, and Terminators for me are always the really cool, like the size of them and how powerful they are. So getting Terminators in there was a real privilege and a really exciting thing, and particularly when you first see them in VR as well. That's one of the bits that I think is really special about this game, is the perspective that gives you, particularly of the size of things, because Space Marines are obviously massive, and the battle sisters are human sized, and so when you play a battle sister and you walk up to a Primaris Marine and he's 8.5 foot tall, I think when we first did it, we showed it to Games Workshop, and they said, "Are you sure that size is right?" And we're like, yeah, no, it definitely is right. It's 8.5 foot tall, and it is huge, and it takes a bit of getting used to, actually, because having somebody, we don't have 8.5 foot tall people very often in this world. So
yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like you said, like in VR, you get a sense of scale much better than you do in a third-person shooter or even a first-person game. Like you can see how big these Marines or Terminator armor, how big it is on a person.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating thing about, well, obviously, as we start to share videos, is that you just don't get that in a video. It's why you sort of desperately want to put people in the headset and go, look at this, and pick the guns up and look up at things.
Nick, you talk about who we're playing as in Battle Sister. Are we playing like a specific type of character that we're familiar with from like the novels or from the world? Are we playing our own character? Are we in regular sister battle armor? Are we in Zephyrin armor? Like, what kind of stuff like that?
Oh, I can say a few bits. Yeah, so we've written our own story. So we work with a writer called Kristen, who has written us a fantastic story, and it's about Sister Ophelia, who is a Celestian battle sister. So she's experienced. She wears the standard Celestian armor, and she. At the beginning of the game, she finds out that her sister, her actual twin sister, who, when she left many years before to join the Order, she got separated from her twin sister, and she finds out that twin sister, who she's long believed to be dead, actually is alive. And then what happens is we've then got this storyline that comes out through the game, which is on the one hand a sort of adventure story against evil, chasing down the bad guy, but then this hunt for the lost sister also sits within that, and that brings up this conflict and story conflict within there of that conflict between faith and family, and between duty and human emotion, which I think is a really interesting story, and hopefully people will really enjoy.
I mean, I think it is too, especially from a chapter of Space Marines, essentially, because they don't, like, you don't really, in the books they go into a little bit, but in gaming media and in the tabletop game, they really don't. I mean, it's always for the Emperor, die for the Emperor, what a great day to die for the Emperor, and you're putting in a situation where what happens when, because they are human, a lot of them are human, what happens when they have to decide, for the Emperor or for, like, myself.
Yeah, and within the story as well, you're fighting alongside Brother Julius, who is a Black Templar, Primaris Marine, and also Sister Rosalina, who is a Retributor battle sister. And so she's quite a lot younger, and he's very much a sort of grizzled veteran. And so we've got that dynamic within there where you've got the differences as well between the different faiths in the Emperor. And so you've got on the one hand that kind of discussion between them, and also in terms of how they react on the battlefield. He's a Space Marine. He's got no one to answer to. He's a Black Templar. He's completely sure of his faith. And then you've got Rosalina, who's a much more younger, more zealous acolyte. And each of those characters evolves through the story of the game, and ultimately ends up sort of with friendship, obviously, but also that sort of changing dynamics as they fight alongside each other in the battlefield.
Not to off track too much, but I always thought it would be interesting to see like the world from someone who used to be like a disgraced Space Marine, like traveling the world as like a mercenary or something. Like what happens on that side? Because we see so many loyal to Space Marines and Imperial Guards. I can't call them Imperial Guard anymore, but you know what I mean. And this sounds like it's right up my alley in terms of what I want to see in a story.
Yeah, that's. I think that was one of the things which got us really excited about doing the Battle Sisters as well, was that because there's so many races we could have looked at, and I think the Battle Sisters, because they are a little bit more human, and you've got that sort of faith and doubt and questions of loyalty and questions of heresy and things like that within there. So we wanted to have a bit of that, and to have that human element within there, because the stories you can tell in this universe is so there's so many you can tell, and so it's great to do that.
How did you guys go about deciding the villains of your story? I know that's a big not issue, but a big point of controversy for a lot of players, because everyone has their favorite faction, everyone has their Necrons, Tyranids, whatever, and they're always disappointed when they're not in a game or some type of meeting. But how did you go about in the design process to decide, okay, we're going to fight Chaos, Cultist, and Chaos Space Marines?
So I think a lot of it came from the Battle Sisters themselves, and so I think once we'd gone down the road of Battle Sisters, we looked at that, and the pairing of Battle Sisters and the Black Templars is actually the Word Bearers, because they're all the sort of the most devout of their individual religions, and so it was that kind of pairing which we thought was quite interesting, and obviously that opens up a load of things to do with demons and quite a lot of variety within there. So I think that was a lot of it. I'm obviously gutted. I love Eldar, so for me, I would love to have Eldar, and I have to say at one point we did have a little bit of Eldar in there, and then that went. So I'm afraid there are no Eldar in the game.
Damn, I mean, that would be great. I mean, could you imagine playing like a Warp Spider in VR? That would be really cool.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think while we're the first created for VR game, hopefully there'll be more. So
yeah, and then speaking of that, like, it's so funny because you mentioned Realm War at the beginning of the interview. Like, I lost a lot of hours in that game. That game was incredibly addictive for me, and it was had a really fun premise. But to go from
quite different,
mobile game to almost, I want to say, like AAA or III VR game, like, what was that like for you as like a studio?
So we'd done, before we did Realm War, a lot of us worked on Drop Dead, which was a Gear VR game, which we then heavily changed and turned into a Quest launch title called Drop Dead Dual Strike. So a lot of us really wanted to do another VR game. I think I think once you've been bitten by that bug, you just want to make more stuff in VR. And so in terms of they're two very different game types, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, some of the team are the same, some obviously are different, and we carried over a lot of the development processes between the two, because actually creating a lot of the assets, we've started pioneering some of the mobile PBR techniques to create assets, because the miniatures are so amazing. What we want to do is make sure that we're always doing them justice, and so that's definitely one of the carry-throughs we've done, even though the games are very different to each other.
Can we talk about where the story is taking place? Is it all on a single planet, or will we be traveling around to different systems?
I can say where we start off, and so we begin in the trenches of a planet called Serion, very much that 40k experience of war, battles, rhinos rumbling overhead, cultists jumping into corridors, and that's some of the stuff we've already shown. We then go up into an orbital cathedral, which is one of the Battle Sisters' places of worship and where they live, and then through a series of events we end up down on an ash planet, and then from that point of view there might be some spaceship action later. So yeah, we move around quite a lot. What we want to do is have that variety, that particularly that sort of filmic variety, and we love films like Indiana Jones and things like that, and so trying to get a little bit of that feel that you're on a big adventure.
Will we see or interact with any other Sisters of Battle types of models that we like to see, like Crusaders or Mortifiers or Penitent Engines, anything like that?
No penitent engines, unfortunately. Although we're starting to look at. We've been doing a lot of work on our multiplayer mode, and so the idea with that is obviously we want to keep expanding that in the future as well. So I've said that nothing's out of the picture for the future multiplayer modes. You do come across quite a few other battle systems, but generally mostly down the main line. No Repentia either, unfortunately.
Like, you really do so much on a budget, you know. There's only
that is the thing, isn't it?
Animate and do with, you know.
But I would like to get one of those Repentia chainswords in, the absolutely massive long ones. I think that'd be amazing.
No, actually, that leads into my next question. I'm still kind of waking up here on the West Coast, but I read that you do have a multiplayer mode, or you're working on a multiplayer mode.
Yeah. Basically, we are working on one. It won't be for this year, but we're hoping to release that as soon as we can, and as soon as it's ready, really. So initially, it'll likely be a horde mode. Although we are actually investigating other modes as well, because it's such a great. It's so great being in VR with bolters, and so it's like, there's so many different possibilities we can do here. And there's some of the levels which I've already said previously have really remind me of the Aztec levels in GoldenEye, and I was like, we've got to do a PvP in here. So yeah, none of that confirmed yet, but what I would say is that we're definitely working on some multiplayer modes, and what we'll do is we'll release those when they're really good, but hopefully soon next year.
See, I think that's great because especially with the Quest, you're not really tethered. So you could say, hey, go out into a 10 by 10 space, put cardboard boxes here, and then just go crazy. You know what I mean? Like, speaking of that, like multiplayer in VR, aside from horrible, but actually fighting other people, I think it's a really interesting concept because people are used to moving so fast in video games, like, you know, abnormally fast, especially in first-person shooters. And when you get into a VR game, you realize, oh, I can't really vault that, change a weapon, turn 160 and fire like in 3 seconds. It takes 10. You know, so I think it's really interesting that the gameplay is slower because it has to be. Like, you would just lose consistently if enemies were as fast as you saw in normal games. Can you talk about how you take that into consideration when designing your multiplayer or even your single player campaign?
Yes, I mean, Sixth Off itself. I mean, the whole physicality of moving has definitely been one of those things that we've had to work on. We're still fine tuning and tweaking, and things like inventory management. What we wanted to do was give people the ability to play in the way they want to play, and so we wanted to have melee in there. We wanted to have the ability to dual wield, and in order to do that, you need to be able to manage your inventory in a quick way. So we've got a system of holster points where you can holster different weapons and swords on your back and things like that, and that's exactly about that kind of trying to utilize people's dexterity and movement and muscle memory to do that, and we've worked through quite a few different iterations of that to get things like the reload mechanics working in a way that's fluid for not just because we've got such a wide range of potential users on this, with people who know VR really well, who've played games like Boneworks and things like that, right the way through to people who've just bought an Oculus Quest for Christmas and want to play. It's the first time they've ever picked up the controllers, and potentially we might be their first game. And so that's it's a wide range, and obviously spend quite a lot of time putting together virtues that allow people to master that physical dexterity of playing the game.
And speaking of that, in the design process, there are 2 ways you can move in VR. You can use regular locomotion, or you can do the teleport mechanic, which some first-person shooters do. What made you decide to go locomotion?
So we've got a kind of hybrid system, a little similar to the Half-Life Alyx system, which does allow you to do some point walks as well, and a lot of it came from experience and iteration and testing internally. We've had obviously a lot of systems which we've tried out, and just trying to mitigate against sickness. We do have a few options within the game as well for different comfort modes as well, to try and make sure that everybody's kind of catered for. But one thing we're really keen was to get that free movement though. I think that was the thing we're sort of holding on to, because coming from Drop Dead, which was very much an on-rails experience, we wanted to make sure we broke away from that and allow people to have that feeling of moving around at speed as a battle sister, because the battle sisters are amazing, they're in power armor, and so they should feel dynamic, they should feel powerful in the world.
One of the things that I wish a lot more VR games had, and I understand why they don't, is peripherals, first-party peripherals for their weapons. Would you ever consider, if you had the option to like make a heavy bolter or a plasma gun peripheral that would attach to the Quest controls in some way, so you'd have that weight and maybe the vibration of like how it would feel?
Possibly. I've back in long deep dark history, we made a game. I made a game called DeeJ Hero, which had a big plastic peripheral, and so I know the challenges of working with big plastic peripherals, and also a little bit challenged about the amount of those in landfill probably now, but I think that at the same time there's something really exciting about doing that kind of thing. So yeah, maybe we'll get the 3D printers going and see what we can come up with. I think maybe a heavy bolter might be a bit too much.
Yeah, it's so funny because I would like Games Workshop they're just starting out. They don't even technically have PR over there yet. They have like marketing teams and stuff like that. I would kill for like a replica heavy bolter or plasma rifle or some a replica chainsword, and they have all these Alpha Solid IP that would do great toy wise, but also could work in video games. I'd love to see it.
I can see your Ghostbusters pack in the background there. So yeah. I should have put my Darth Vader helmet in the back.
Full-size Space Marine helmet. I guess my other question is, was there anything in the game that you can talk about that you really wanted to put in but just didn't have the time or budget to do so?
I mean, there always is. I mean, there's always. Where do we start? There's so many, and that's the thing with the lore, is that you start off and you're like, all these characters and all these things. I would have loved to have had Zephyrim, and actually we don't have Zephyrim, and that sort of jetpack mechanic I think would have been amazing. So maybe in the future. What else would I love to get in there? I would have liked to have got. So the trouble is, if I say it, then it's definitely not in there, is it?
That's true. So you guys, I said, be careful. I don't want you to.
I won't list too many things, but I mean, Eldar would be one. I'd love to get Eldar in. I think things like I love the Harlequins. I would have. I think, to be honest, there's a whole game there just in having a Harlequin troop. Would be amazing. So where do you start with 40k? Really, there's so many.
What was your biggest challenge for you personally on this project? Anything in particular? Was it the whole project in general? Developing
for mobile VR is always a huge challenge from a optimization point of view, and I think that's definitely one of the biggest challenges. My background is as an artist, and so I just want to make things look pretty all the time and look amazing. And you always want to put more in. You always want to add more detail and add more scale and more stuff. And so that's the big challenge. We've got we've got Quest, but Quest 2 is amazing. The hardware bump on that is fantastic and really exciting, and I can't wait to keep making more and more stuff for Quest 2 as well. But the challenges of just keeping a frame rate, and that's an everyday challenge when you're making for Quest is making sure we're running optimally, and I quite like that. I think that's really exciting. The making sure that everything is really really optimized. It's not like a PC game where effectively it's infinite almost, because you just go, someone needs to get an RTX card, etc. But so that's definitely the biggest challenge, I think, day to day, is just to do that, and but we're there. So
right now we're in the next gen console cycles. The consoles came out today, and a lot of people are doing this upgrade. Like, they have the game, then they're going to release a patch that upgrades it, take advantage of the hardware. Since the Quest has a PC link, would that be something that your team might be interested in doing? Like, do something like, you can have better resolution, better textures, better frame rates if you do PC link with this particular version if you want to use PC link?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've already said that. I think we're going to launch a Rift version next year. So that would allow us to have that high def version. So we're definitely looking at doing that. Can't confirm what date that would be yet. But we've done quite a lot of the background work for that. So definitely on there, and also as we go forwards, as we continue to find out more with the Quest 2, as we've had that, then I think there's more and more potential stuff we can do in patches as well going forwards with Quest 2 as well.
And then my second to last question is this exclusive on Oculus Quest? Is this a timed exclusive? So are you coming out on other platforms, sometime in the future, or is this always going to be on Oculus platforms forever?
We've said before that Oculus Quest initially, Rift version coming after, and then we are exploring other potential options in the future as well. So,
James, when can people get their hands on Warhammer 40k Battle Sister?
December. Just in time for Christmas. Get it. It's going to be an amazing FPS game that you can play while sitting around the Christmas tree. Imagine it. Killing heretics. I wanted that to be our marketing line. Purge heretics at Christmas.